We all remember the heartwarming laughs of Sister, Sister. But more than 30 years later, the story behind those smiles feels very different. Many of the cast have faced sudden tragedies, high-profile divorces, and legal battles that will change how you see them forever. Stay with us, because the truth behind it all may be more shocking than you ever expected. Tamera Mowry as Tia Landry. Let's begin with Tamera Mowry, who played Tia Landry, the intelligent twin separated at birth and raised in inner-city Detroit. At just 16, she stepped into Sister, 1994, as the thoughtful, academically driven sister whose perspective grounded the story's emotional core. Her grounded and thoughtful presence gave the story both heart and balance. Behind that early success, the pressure of fame began quietly shaping her life in ways few could see. Growing up in the spotlight alongside her twin sister meant constantly maintaining a perfect image, and over time, that expectation led to emotional exhaustion. Even as she continued working in projects like The Game and Family Reunion, Tia was privately battling endometriosis. The chronic pain was not just physical, it became a long-term psychological burden that forced her to rethink her relationship with her own body. Her personal life, which once appeared stable, slowly revealed deeper struggles. Tia married actor Corey Hardrict in 2008, building what seemed like a strong family with their 2 children. But after years of trying to hold everything together, she later admitted she had been carrying too much emotionally. Following the birth of her children, she also faced postpartum depression, intensifying her sense of isolation. By 2022, the couple separated, and their divorce was finalized in 2023 because of accumulated emotional strain that could no longer be ignored. Today, Tamera Mowry is 48 years old and continues to work as an actress, entrepreneur, and author, focusing on rebuilding her life with greater balance and honesty. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, she remains a familiar face in entertainment. But more importantly, a woman who has endured years of silent battles and emerged with a quieter, hard-earned strength. Sherman Hemsley as Grandpa Campbell. We also have Sherman Hemsley, who played Grandpa Campbell, the spirited grandfather whose appearances brought veteran comic weight and old-school charm to Sister, Sister. In 1995, he was already in his late 50s when he appeared on the series, carrying with him the legacy of one of television's most recognizable comic careers. Yet Sherman Hemsley's later life carried a sadness far removed from the bold characters that made him famous. Best known for The Jeffersons and later Amen, he spent years fighting the burden of typecasting, often being pushed back toward variations of George Jefferson even after proving he could do far more. In his final years, his health deteriorated due to lung and bronchial cancer, eventually leading to superior vena cava syndrome, a serious complication that marked the beginning of the end. But the most heartbreaking part of his story came after he died. Sherman Hemsley passed away on July 24, 2012, at the age of 74, at his home in El Paso, Texas. Under ordinary circumstances, that would have been the end of a long and influential life. Instead, it became the start of a humiliating legal battle. A dispute over his will erupted between his longtime associate Flora Enchinton and a man claiming to be his half-brother. And because of that fight, Hemsley's body remained unburied for more than 3 months in a funeral home. For a beloved comedy icon, it was an agonizingly bleak ending. His final rest delayed not by mystery, but by conflict over money, legitimacy, and ownership of his legacy. In the end, Sherman Hemsley was buried with military honors at Fort Bliss National Cemetery in El Paso, Texas, a dignified conclusion that came far later than it should have. Though estimates of his wealth varied, his net worth was widely placed at around $3 million at the time of his death, modest for a man whose face had once defined an era of television. Tamera Mowry as Tamera Campbell. Shifting focus to Tamera Mowry, who played Tamera Campbell, the outgoing, boy-crazy twin raised in the suburbs. She was 16 years old when she brought to life a carefree, boy-crazy personality whose energy and spontaneity defined much of the show's humor. Her vibrant and spontaneous energy made the sisters' dynamic unforgettable. Years after the cameras stopped rolling, a tragedy struck that would redefine her entire life. In 2018, her niece, Elena Housley, was killed in a mass shooting at the Borderline Bar and Grill in California. The loss was sudden, violent, and impossible to process. Tamera publicly shared her heartbreak, but behind that, she was dealing with deep emotional trauma. No amount of fame or success, even after hosting The Real, could shield her from that kind of pain. At the same time, she faced more subtle but persistent struggles. Her marriage to journalist Adam Housley, whom she wed in 2011, brought happiness, but also exposed her to racial criticism and online attacks due to their interracial relationship. Alongside that, she too lived with endometriosis, enduring chronic pain that mirrored her sister's condition. These combined pressures created a life far more complicated than her cheerful on-screen persona suggested. Now, Tamera Mowry Housley is 48 years old and continues to appear in television projects and films, including Hallmark Productions, while prioritizing her family and personal healing. With an estimated net worth of around $4 million, she stands as someone who has faced unimaginable loss, yet continues to move forward, carrying both her success and her sorrow with quiet resilience. Jackée Harry as Lisa Landry. We now turn to Jackée Harry, who portrayed Lisa Landry, the bold, witty adoptive mother raising her daughter on her own. At 38, she brought to life a fiercely independent woman navigating motherhood and love in Sister, 1994. Her charisma and comedic timing elevated the show, making Lisa one of its most unforgettable and dynamic characters. But long before that success, and even after it, Jackée faced a quieter kind of struggle, one rooted not in failure, but in being overlooked. Despite making history as the first African-American woman to win a Primetime Emmy for her role in 227, Hollywood slowly began to turn away as she aged. The industry that once celebrated her talent started offering fewer meaningful roles, forcing her into smaller appearances just to remain visible. Her personal life mirrored that instability. Jackée was first married to composer and conductor Jerry Jemmett, a relationship that eventually ended. She later married Elgin Charles Williams in 1996, but that marriage also ended in divorce in 2003. In between those years, she adopted her son Frank in 1997, stepping into motherhood while facing the pressures of a declining career. Without consistent support, she carried the responsibility largely on her own, balancing financial uncertainty with the demands of raising a child. It was a life far removed from the confidence she projected on screen. In 2026, Jackée Harry is 70 years old and continues to work in television, including her role as Paulina Price on Days of Our Lives, proving her enduring presence in the industry. With an estimated net worth of around $6 million, her journey reflects not just success, but resilience, surviving an industry that nearly forgot her and still finding a way to stand in the spotlight. Tim Reid as Ray Campbell. Shifting focus to Tim Reid, who played Ray Campbell, the caring, level-headed adoptive father trying to hold a blended family together. At 50, he embodied a steady and grounded figure in Sister, 1994, bringing warmth and quiet authority to the series. His role gave the show stability, anchoring its more chaotic moments with wisdom and restraint. Yet behind that calm presence was a man willing to risk everything for something much bigger than fame. Tim Reid made a bold and dangerous decision. He invested heavily into building New Millennium Studios, one of the largest independent Black-owned studios outside Hollywood. It was not just a business move, but a mission to create space for Black storytelling. However, that dream came with enormous financial pressure. Without strong state support and facing industry barriers, the studio struggled to sustain itself, placing Reid under significant economic strain and forcing difficult decisions, including eventually selling the property. His personal life also carried its own complexities. Reid was first married to Rita Ann Sykes in 1966, with whom he had 2 children before their divorce in 1980. He later married actress Daphne Maxwell Reid in 1982, and together they supported each other through both creative ambitions and financial challenges. While many actors chase continued fame, Reid chose a different path, stepping away from the spotlight to become a mentor, educator, and advocate for the next generation. Today, Tim Reid is 82 years old and remains active behind the scenes as a mentor and founder of initiatives like the Legacy Media Institute, continuing to support young creators. With an estimated net worth of around $3 million, his legacy is not defined by wealth or fame, but by the risks he took and the doors he opened for others to follow. Marques Houston as Roger Evans. Now we come to Marques Houston, who played Roger Evans, the fast-talking, love-struck neighbor in Sister, Sister. Only 13 when he began appearing in the series, he gave the show a youthful spark and a familiar comic rhythm that helped make the neighborhood feel alive. That early charm made him memorable in all the series. But the pain in Marques Houston's life started early, and it never fully disappeared behind the celebrity image. In 1997, while he was still a teenager, his mother died from lymphoma. Losing a parent at such a formative age can fracture a person quietly, and in his case, that grief unfolded while he was still being expected to perform, smile, and grow up in public. Even as he built a career through music with IMX and later as a solo R&B artist with albums like MH and Veteran, there was always the pressure of proving he was more than the cute boy next door. He kept moving between acting, singing, and producing, but that constant reinvention also suggested a man trying to stay relevant in an industry that rarely lets former child stars rest. Then came the controversy that changed how many people saw him. In 2020, Marques married Mia Dickey, who was nearly 20 years younger than he was, and the backlash was immediate and brutal. Public criticism intensified because many believed the relationship may have begun when she was still underage, something Houston denied while insisting their romance only started after she turned 18. Even so, the damage to his reputation was real. The innocent image he once carried from Sister, Sister was suddenly replaced by suspicion, debate, and calls for boycotts. What made it worse was that no explanation seemed strong enough to silence the controversy. For many viewers, the scandal permanently overshadowed the sweetness that had once defined him. As of 2026, Marques Houston is 45 years old and continues working as a singer, actor, writer, and producer while also releasing new music, including the 2026 single, Only Me. He remains married to Mia Dickey, and together they are raising their children, but the public conversation around his name has never fully returned to what it once was. With an estimated net worth of around $5 million, he is still financially established. Yet his story now feels divided between early fame, private grief, and a public image that was never quite the same again. RonReaco Lee as Tyreek Scott. Next is RonReaco Lee, who portrayed Tyreek Scott, the hard-working mechanic and Tia's boyfriend whose presence brought a more mature, grounded layer to Sister, Sister. He was 20 years old when he gave the series a steadier romantic storyline and helped expand it beyond teenage comedy. Unlike stars whose careers explode all at once, RonReaco Lee built his life in Hollywood through persistence, not security. That may sound admirable on the surface, but it also meant years of instability, repeated auditions, and the exhausting reality of always needing the next job. Even after appearing in projects like Let's Stay Together and Survivor's Remorse, He never fully entered the protected world of top-tier stardom. Instead, he became the kind of actor Hollywood depends on, but rarely celebrates enough. The reliable professional who works constantly, yet still faces uncertainty. That kind of career can wear a person down in ways the audience never sees. That tension shaped much of his path. RonReaco kept showing up, in television, in films, in recurring parts, in guest roles, because he had to. From Glory to Guess Who, from Madea Goes to Jail to Mea Culpa, he remained present, but often just outside the spotlight reserved for bigger names. For many actors, that middle ground is one of the hardest places to survive. His financial and professional uncertainty, repeated over decades, became the quiet hardship of his career. Now, RonReaco Lee is 49 years old and continues working steadily in film and television while maintaining a long marriage with Shiana Freeman, whom he married in 2010, and raising their 2 children. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, his story is less about glamour than survival. Deon Richmond as Jordan Bennett. Then there's Deon Richmond, who played Jordan Bennett, Tamera's charming boyfriend who entered Sister Sister in its later years. At 19 years old, he began appearing in 1997, helping give the final stretch of the series a fresh dynamic and a slightly more grown-up, emotional tone. What made Deon Richmond's path difficult was not one explosive scandal, but the slow and painful disappearance that often happens to former child stars. He had already been widely recognized as Kenny, or Bud, on The Cosby Show, and that early success gave him a strong start, but it also created a trap. As he got older, Hollywood seemed unsure what to do with him. He could act, he had screen presence, and he kept working in films like Scream 3 and Not Another Teen Movie, yet he was repeatedly pushed toward supporting comic parts rather than the kind of adult leading roles that might have transformed his career. That kind of typecasting can quietly erode momentum, because once an actor is seen as familiar but not essential, the industry begins to move on without ever officially saying so. Over time, that professional stagnation seemed to turn into a different kind of survival. Instead of chasing constant visibility, Deon gradually stepped back, appearing less frequently and guarding his private life more closely. For someone who had spent childhood in front of cameras, that silence may have been protection as much as retreat. As of 2026, Deon Richmond is 48 years old and has remained largely private, with only occasional screen appearances in recent years after credits that included Trippin', Van Wilder, and Psych. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, his story feels less like a fall from grace than a quiet withdrawal from an industry that never fully figured out how to let him grow. Esther Scott as Maddie now. We come to Esther Scott, who played Maddie, a supporting figure whose brief presence added warmth and familiarity to Sister Sister. She was 41 years old during her time around the series, carrying the quiet strength of a seasoned character actress. Even in smaller appearances, she brought a lived-in authenticity that helped the world of the show feel fuller and more real. What makes Esther Scott's story so moving is that she was never the kind of star Hollywood loudly celebrated, yet she became one of those faces audiences trusted without always knowing her name. She built a career through persistence, not hype, appearing in more than 70 projects across television and film, including Boys and the Hood and Dreamgirls. That kind of career demands endurance, humility, and constant reinvention, especially for a black supporting actress in an industry that often saves its attention for others. She kept working, kept showing up, and kept giving weight to scenes that might have fallen flat in less capable hands. There is something deeply bittersweet in that kind of legacy, being essential to so many stories, while rarely being placed at the center of one. Her life did not become defined by scandal or tabloid drama, but by dedication. Esther Scott represented the kind of performer who holds Hollywood together from the margins, steady, skilled, and dependable. That is why her death hit so many colleagues and longtime viewers with such sadness. She was still working, still part of the fabric of the industry, when everything ended suddenly. Esther Scott died on February 14, 2020, at the age of 66 in Los Angeles, after suffering a sudden heart attack. Her passing left behind the kind of grief reserved for artists who were never flashy, but always there, reliable, recognizable, and deeply valued by those who worked with them. Bianca Lawson as RonReaco Lee. Then there's Bianca Lawson, who played RonReaco Lee, Tamera's stylish and confident friend. At only 15 years old, she added attitude and youthful energy to Sister Sister. Her performance helped give the series an extra layer of cool, and it was an early sign of the unusual screen longevity that would later define her career. But Bianca Lawson's story is unusual precisely because it is not built around public collapse. In an industry that often rewards chaos and then punishes it, she chose something far less dramatic and much harder to maintain: control. Over the years, while appearing in projects like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Pretty Little Liars, and later Queen Sugar, she became known for her almost unbelievable youthful appearance, continuing to play teenagers long after most actors had aged out of those roles. That may sound like an advantage, but it also came with a quiet, professional trap. When an actor is seen as eternally young, the industry can hesitate to imagine them differently. Bianca managed to turn that limitation into a signature, yet there is still a subtle cost in being admired for seeming ageless rather than being fully recognized for depth, range, and endurance. As of 2026, Bianca Lawson is 47 years old and continues to be respected as an actress and producer whose career has stretched from teen television to mature dramatic work. She remains known for projects such as Pretty Little Liars and Queen Sugar, and for the rare discipline with which she has protected both her image and her mental well-being. With an estimated net worth of around $2 million, her story is not the loudest in Hollywood, but it may be one of the most carefully preserved. Alexis Fields as Davian Johnson. Moving along, we meet Alexis Fields, who played Davian Johnson, a recurring student character adding charm and attitude to Sister Sister. At just 15 during her time on the show, she hinted at someone already shaped by years of exposure to the industry through her mother and sister. But that same background became one of the quiet struggles that followed her throughout her career. Being the daughter of Chip Fields and the younger sister of Kim Fields meant Alexis was never simply judged as herself. Every role, every appearance, every step forward came with an invisible comparison attached. While she built a steady resume with shows like Moesha, Kenan, and Kel, and The Parenthood, obscurity is the challenge to her. Over time, that kind of pressure reshapes ambition, turning the pursuit of fame into something more complicated and sometimes less desirable. Instead of fighting endlessly for a spotlight that came with expectations she didn't choose, Alexis made a different decision. She stepped back. In an industry where staying visible often means sacrificing stability, she chose family over fame. Marriage, motherhood, and a quieter life became her focus, not as a retreat, but as a deliberate shift in values. As of 2026, Alexis Fields is 47 years old, living a more private life centered around her family with her husband Kevin Jackson and their children. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, her story reflects a choice that many in Hollywood never make: stepping away early enough to keep control of her own life. Dorian Wilson as Terrence Winningham, and then we arrive at Dorian Wilson, who played Terrence Winningham, Lisa's confident and well-established love interest, bringing a mature, grounded dynamic to Sister. At 36, when he appeared in the series, he stood out as one of the more seasoned figures in the cast, offering a contrast to the youthful energy that defined much of the show. Unlike many actors whose careers rise and fall dramatically, Dorian Wilson's journey has been marked by consistency. Yet even that stability comes with its own unspoken challenges. In Hollywood, being reliable often means being overlooked. While he delivered memorable roles in The Parkers, Dream On, and numerous guest appearances across major sitcoms, he was rarely pushed into leading man territory. Instead, he became one of those familiar faces audiences recognize instantly, but struggle to name, a paradox that reflects both success and limitation at the same time. Rather than chasing visibility at all costs, Wilson gradually shifted part of his focus toward mentoring and teaching. That decision speaks to a deeper understanding of longevity, not just staying in front of the camera, but shaping what comes after. While many actors fade quietly, he redirected his experience into guiding younger performers, turning decades of work into something that extends beyond his own screen time. It's a quieter legacy, but one that carries weight in ways audiences rarely see. Today, Dorian Wilson is 68 years old and continues to be respected as both an actor and acting coach. He remains married to Joanne Wilson, maintaining a stable personal life far removed from the chaos often associated with the industry. With an estimated net worth of around $1 million, his story is not defined by dramatic highs or lows, but by something far rarer in Hollywood: steady presence, lasting relevance, and a career built on quiet resilience. Tamera Mowry as Sammy. Finally, we have Tamera Mowry, who played Sammy, the adorable young cousin whose appearances brought lighthearted charm to Sister. At only 8 years old during his time on the show, he stood out as one of the youngest faces, yet already carried the confidence of someone raised inside the industry. Even in small moments, his presence hinted at a future far beyond a simple child role. But growing up in that spotlight came with a quiet pressure that never truly disappeared. As the younger brother of Tia and Tamera Mowry, Taj was constantly measured against two already established stars. While he found success early with Smart Guy and later Baby Daddy, there was always an underlying need to prove that he wasn't just the little brother. That kind of comparison can shape identity in ways that are hard to escape. Instead of reacting, Taj chose silence, a decision that protected his privacy but also left many questions unanswered in the public eye. There is also a deeper emotional layer tied to loss. His past relationship with Naya Rivera and her tragic death in 2020 marked one of the most personal and painful chapters of his life. For someone who grew up surrounded by fame, these moments often arrive quietly, but leave a lasting impact. Now, Tamera Mowry is 40 years old, continuing to work in television and entertainment while maintaining a relatively private life. Known for projects like Smart Guy, Kim Possible, and Baby Daddy, he has built a steady career across decades. With an estimated net worth of around $1.5 million, his journey reflects a constant balancing act between family legacy, personal identity, and the quiet decision to keep certain parts of his life away from the spotlight. After more than 3 decades, Sister, 1994, may still feel warm and familiar. But the real stories behind its cast reveal a much darker reality shaped by pressure, loss, and quiet sacrifices. Which journey shocked you the most, and did any of these truths change the way you see the show today? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us for more Then and Now 2026 stories you were never meant to hear.